My name is Rebecca Mayman, and I'm an academic associate for graduate education in our Faculty of Science. So the faculty hired me back in August, and it's a new position formed especially to help our graduate students. So I'm working with our faculty as well as other units at McGill, for example, graduate and postdoctoral studies, to do everything that we can to support you in not just your studies, but also your professional development and your success in your career after you finish your studies at McGill. So prior to coming from McGill, I used to work in the private sector for the first talent management firm that specialized in PhDs and scientists. So I've done lots of research on all the wonderful skills that we developed during our graduate studies, and as well as research with employers who hire them after they're finished. So I also used to do training for graduate students as well, and I used to work as a recruiter and a headhunter for PhDs and scientists in the Montreal and Toronto areas. So it was really wonderful for me to come back to McGill because I've done my graduate studies here as well, and to hopefully help all of you be successful as you transition from your graduate work into the next step of your career. So with that, I'll maybe hand it over to Lorna for a second so that you can know who she is as well.
Sure. So happy to be here. My name is Lorna Mceckern. I have been at McGill for quite some time. I've come and gone a couple of times, but overall, most of my career has been at McGill. Currently, I am the program manager for MyPath, which you're going to hear a little bit more about in a moment. And prior to my role at graduate and postdoctoral studies, I worked at the Career Planning Service for many years as a career counselor for PhDs and postdocs. And so I have a long passion for working with PhD students and postdocs to help them to kind of transition into a wide variety of different careers. And to be honest, for years, my secret fantasy has been, how could I get you to think about some of this stuff a little bit earlier in your degree? Because often in my role as a career counselor, I would see students closer to the end of their degree, at a point where they're maybe writing up their dissertation and starting to kind of realize there's life after McGill. What will that life look like? And that's a challenging time to be asking yourself those questions, because you're often kind of in a high stress period because you're writing your dissertation and that sort of thing. So part of what my role at GPS is to help students start engaging with their degree a little bit more intentionally earlier on in their degree, so that you can kind of do this slowly but surely over the course of your time at McGill, as opposed to all at the end. So I'll pass it back to Rebecca to kick us off.
Thank you. Okay, so why are we here? The question, why did you come to graduate school, is a big one. If anyone actually has any immediate thoughts to that, you can feel free to put them in the chat, and I would love to see that. But if you don't, that's okay. So I wanted to pose that question and maybe share a little bit about what I've seen. For example, I do know of research that's looked at some of this, and we see that there are different reasons, right, depending on who you are and what you're looking for. Sometimes it could be just your desire for personal growth and to better yourself. We've also seen that people go into graduate studies for the intellectual growth, which there's a tie there, but sometimes different, or professional growth. Sometimes people just say, you know what, I want to get a better job, and this is the way that I think we could do it. And those are the three that come to the top of my mind from some research I was just reading before, but there are a number of other reasons, I imagine. And no matter what the reason is for you, or if you have no idea, which is okay. I felt like that when I started my graduate studies. But whatever that answer is for you, that there is a way for you to be able to help yourself achieve that goal. And this is what the Peer Pathways program is about. So we're looking to use an individual development plan, which we tailor to ourselves, to help reach those goals. And since Lorna has been very instrumental in creating this program, I'll let her explain it to you a bit more in detail.
Yeah, so sort of picking up on that idea, sort of the premise for creating my path and implementing individual development plans at McGill, and more specifically the Peer Pathways program, is to help you have clarity around how do you personally define success in graduate school, so that you can create goals that align with that vision of success and ultimately engage with your graduate experience in a more intentional and meaningful way. Rather than sort of just responding to the many different stressors that come along, which I think we all do at different points in our lives. Graduate school is especially demanding, and there's very little distinction between when it starts and when it ends. It's not a 9 to 5 thing. And so I think it can be easy to lose the thread about, as to why am I here and what am I hoping to accomplish and why am I pursuing this in the first place? So the whole sort of underlying framework that we're using for the individual development plan at McGill is the proactive goal regulatory process, which is pretty well described in the literature, and you'll see slightly different models of it. I'm showing you one here in the references down in the corner if you're kind of curious at looking at any of the material. In fact, we have a kind of a long list of references. So anytime Rebecca and I say things like literature shows, you can take a look at the list of references related to this for those of you who are curious and want to dig into the source material. But basically the proactive goal regulatory process is what it sounds like. It is a process that we use to help us actually achieve our goals. And essentially the idea is that we start with a vision. So we start with a vision of where we want to go in the future. And we maybe envision several different pathways or ideas about what we might like to go, have change for us in the future, or what kinds of life we want to pursue. And once we've engaged in that process a little bit, we're in a position to start planning. So we can start planning to bring about that envisioned future or futures. In fact, the research is pretty clear on the idea that graduate students are often entertaining multiple career paths at the same time, and you change your mind back and forth throughout your degree. It's perfectly normal to continuously change your mind. It's not because you're undecided that you're somehow uncommitted. It's a very normal, natural thing to be undecided. And so you can that doesn't mean you don't need to plan or can't plan just because you don't know exactly where you want to go. You can think about planning sort of more holistically in terms of, I'd like to develop leadership skills so that I can pursue this future, that future, this other future. So you don't need to think of it so rigidly. Based on that planning, you then kind of engage in the different behaviors that you'd like to pursue and bring about the change or pursue the projects, et cetera, that you're interested in pursuing. And then ultimately, you need to kind of reflect back on how is that working for you? Has it, did the plan that you engaged in over the last 3 months, 6 months, year, et cetera, work for you, so that you have a sense of, what might you want to change moving forward? How has your vision for the future changed? What types of planning methods work best for you, et cetera. So this is sort of pretty well described, as I said, in the literature as the process that we go through. And ultimately, the IDP, the Individual Development Plan, taps into exactly the same process. The difference being only that we start with reflection rather than end with reflection. I think it's very difficult to envision a future without having some kind of reference point. And so the logical reference point is, well, how do I want the next 6 months to be different from the last 6 months? And the way to answer that question is to say, well, how were the last 6 months? And I think for most of us, it was pretty weird. It was not a usual 6 months. And it's probably really worth unpacking what that was like for you, what kinds of challenges you experienced, where you were most readily able to overcome those challenges, and where you really struggled. So once you've had a chance to reflect, then you can go through the process of identifying goals and creating a plan and engaging, just as we described before. And those first 3 components, reflect, plan, establish goals or envision, and then plan, That's what an IDP is. An IDP is both a process and a product. It is those 3 steps. And then 99% of your time, you're actually engaging with that plan. And hopefully every so often, you're kind of checking back in to see whether or not that plan is working for you. Ultimately, this is an iterative process. So you repeat this process regularly throughout your time at McGill. We recommend that you do it at least once a year. Sort of kind of really solidly sit down and spend a couple of hours asking yourself, how do I want this next academic year to go? Or how do I want this next calendar year to go? We also recommend that you check in and maybe make adjustments every semester or even more frequently. So if a really sort of interesting opportunity comes up or an unexpected challenge comes up, such as a pandemic, then you might need to revise that plan. So really think of your IDP as a living document that allows you to kind of be intentional throughout your degree. If I could call this an individual development intention, I would, because I do, a plan is sort of implies that it's fixed, when in fact, actually, it's probably not a good idea for it to be too fixed, because you want to be responsive to, as I said, opportunities and challenges that come up. The IDP is meant to be applied to many different domains in your life, so you can use that process to help you identify academic goals, as well as professional development goals, career planning goals, wellness goals. You'll see different versions of this. Some people have things, institutions have something called an individual career plan. You might have encountered individual education plans in the past, researcher development plan. There's many different versions of this. Individual development plan is nice and generic. It allows you to encompass all of these different areas. And in fact, we really want to encourage you, and this is how the IDP is different from progress tracking. Progress tracking form is really meant to be a document that you and your supervisor work on together to identify specific academic, or even more narrowly, specific research objectives. So it's a very narrow document that doesn't kind of take into account all the other things that you might like to accomplish related to your professional development, other academic goals you might have, your personal well-being. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're trying to look at with the IDP. And I'm going to just kind of quickly, how many of you here, you could put your hand up or give a thumbs up or put a note in the chat. How many of you here are PhDs who were admitted fall 2019 or later? Okay, we've got a few of you. So I'll take a quick moment to just explain. So those of you who were admitted fall 2019 or later, you might have received an email from me or from somebody in your department about the IDP reporting policy. And I just want to do a real quick explanation of what that is, because I know there's always people who have a bit of anxiety around that. So the IDP itself is a personal document. This is a document that you create, you can share or not share, totally up to you, and you don't have to do it. The IDP reporting policy is really that GPS, Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies, wants to know whether or not you created an IDP. We don't want to force you to do one, although we're strongly recommending that you do one, because the research is pretty clear that people who are proactive around goal setting are more likely to achieve those goals and more likely to have a meaningful experience while they're in graduate school. So we strongly recommend it, but we don't want to force you to do it. But we do want to know whether or not you did it. So the reporting policy is really, really simple. It's a simple form that's in my courses. You'll have been automatically enrolled in the Individual Development Plan PhD MyPath course if you're required to do this. And it's literally a one-page document where you check a box saying, yes, I did it, or check a box saying, no, I didn't do it, and you sign off on that. And nothing horrific will happen to you if you didn't actually do an IDP. We just want to know if you did it or not. So we want to get a sense of whether people are engaging with this, and if they are, how, and if they aren't, why not? So that's what the reporting requirement is. And if you have more questions about that, I can answer them closer to the end. So we wanted to give you lots of different ways to complete an IDP at McGill, and just a broad overview of the different methods that we have available to you through MyPath. We have a workbook, which is quite a long workbook that really walks you through the different steps that I described earlier. We have a planner, which is more of an agenda, And that's more for somebody who kind of knows what their goals are, but needs maybe a bit of sort of structured support actually following through on those goals. We have an online platform for students who prefer to do this kind of thing online. And in fact, you can also just download the annual IDP form, which is encompassed in the IDP workbook, but you can download it separately. So if you already know what your goals are, but you just want to write them down somewhere in a structured manner, you can do that too, and that's not listed there as one of the tools. We also have a series of professional development guides, which are now housed on the SkillSets website. We have a variety of programming to support you, and I won't go through all of them. I'll just jump straight into the one that we're going to be offering. Rebecca and I are going to be co-facilitating the Peer Pathways program and discussion groups for students in the Faculty of Science in particular. So we wanted to create a special opportunity for you guys to connect with each other, and also for us to be able to support you in creating this IDP document. So Rebecca, I don't know if you want to pick up here.
Sure. Thank you so much, Lorna. So what we're looking to do next semester is, as Lorna mentioned, have something specifically for science, where we will have a series of workshops and peer discussion groups. So the workshops are designed to help you during the process of creating your IDP and giving you the space and time to carve into your calendar to do it and to be productive in doing that. And then in between those workshops, we will have time just to talk, to meet, to get together, for you to talk with people who are going through that same process, because those are often the times where you will find solutions and new ideas that will help you progress in meeting your goals and even in identifying what they might be or having new ones. So all of this is something that will be available to master's students, PhDs, and postdoctoral fellows in the Faculty of Science. We will ask for you to register, but it's not obligatory that you need to attend every single session. Of course, I would recommend that you do, because you would get the most out of it. But if there's maybe something that you're not going to be able to make it to, please don't let that deter you from just getting involved or just being there for any part of it that you can. So we're looking to start this in the end of January. I believe the first one is the 27th. Yeah. And those workshops and peer discussion groups will alternate and occur every 2 weeks on Wednesdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And then, of course, in between those meetings, that's where you can take some time on personally to complete some of the individual exercises, which are just really meant to help you to reflect and to set your goals. Am I missing anything there, Lorna?
No, I don't think so. The 3 workshops, the sort of main workshops, Build Your Profile, Brainstorm Your Future, and Create Your IDP, essentially follow the 3 modules that are in the MyPath IDP workbook. You'll see if you download the workbook that that's kind of how it's broken down. So that first workshop will really cover things like, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my values? How do I define success? What kinds of areas for growth am I kind of most interested in working on? What are the areas for growth that are most important for my success and well-being? And so it's kind of establishing that baseline that we talked about earlier. Workshop number 2 will focus more on what kind of future do I want to have for myself? And it might have some components of career exploration, or how to go about using your self-reflection to help you with career exploration if you're at that stage. And if you're not at that stage, it's more about professional development and well-being and so on. And it's in that final workshop that we really get into the nuts and bolts of creating SMART goals and talking about strategies for being able to follow through on those goals, that sort of thing. So taking it nice and slow like this kind of gives you lots of time to ponder in between. And while we do recommend that you work on the exercises in between sessions, In fact, we'll be giving you quite a bit of time during the workshops and during the discussion meetings to work on these as well. So you might find that this is a nice way to kind of carve out time to do something that otherwise is difficult to kind of make the time for. You might know, yes, this is important, I should do this, but somehow or other you never find the time to kind of sit down and do that navel gazing because it always feels like it's something you can put off. So part of the purpose of the Peer Pathways program is to help you create that time for yourself, and to do it in collaboration with others. So, this peer component, I think, will really help you to learn from each other and get troubleshoot and get ideas from each other. So we have exercises to kind of help you build ideas in that way. So sometimes you're like, I think I want to do leadership, but like how? And through the conversation, we can come up with great ideas together.